In this video, we're going to talk about the distributive property, and also we're going to talk about FOIL. So what to know before you attempt this lesson: you should just know basic multiplication. You should know your exponent rules, mainly this exponent rule that when you multiply two things, then you add the exponents. And also know about combining like terms. And we have things like this. You can combine terms if they have the same x or variable parts. So in this case, there's x's that are the same, so you can combine them. All right, so in this video, we're going to be focused on distribution. We have to distribute when we combine multiplication with addition. So normally with the order of operations, we would simplify inside the parentheses first. We would try to combine these two, but with these random letters, we can't combine B and C. We can't add them together. All right, so now we can move on to this multiplication. And the distributive property says I can combine this addition and multiplication by just distributing this A into both those. So I do A times B and A times C. So a lot of times I draw these arrows to kind of remind you to do both these operations. A goes to both those terms, or however many terms are in the parentheses. All right, so here's a few examples. 3x times x minus 2. All right, this whole thing, 3x, is going to multiply into both these terms. So I'll write out this middle step that you normally won't write out, but I'll write out. So the first thing I'm going to do is 3x times x minus 3x times 2. I normally don't have to write out that step, but just to show what's happening. 3x times x, all right, when there's not an exponent, if it's just an x, that's x to the first. This is x to the first times x to the first is going to give me x squared, because we're adding those exponents, 1 plus 1. And in the back, 3 times 2 is 6. All right, so when you're multiplying, you just kind of multiply the similar stuff together. And then these are not like terms because this one has an x squared and this one only has an x. So we just have to leave this as our final answer. All right, for the next example, 2x squared times this thing in parentheses. Our distributive property says I take what's on the outside and I distribute it into everything on the inside. In this case, I'm going to have to multiply it 3 separate times. And again, I'm going to write this middle step that you don't normally have to write. Just to show that this 2x squared is just getting multiplied by each term. And now 2x squared times 3, multiply the numbers together to give me 6x squared. 2x squared times 4x, I can multiply the numbers together to give me 8. Then x squared times x to the first, 2 plus 1 is x cubed. 2 times 6 is 12. X squared times x to the fourth, that's 2 plus 4 is x to the sixth. All right, so that's our final answer. Again, no like terms in our final answer, so that's your final thing without having to do any more simplifying. All right, so here's one for you to try on your own quickly. All right, multiply these and then fully simplify by using the distributive property. All right, I'll show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. All right, and this is the answer. 4 times 2 is 8. X squared times x to the first is x cubed. All right, 4 times 3 is 12. X squared and x squared makes x to the fourth. All right, so now we're just going to look at what happens when you do more complicated distribution. All right, you've probably done distribution a lot. All right, but if I do x minus 3 times x plus 2, how can I multiply these things together? All right, normally when we're doing distribution, we just have this kind of single term in front. All right, so how can I do this? Well, if I just think about this as a single term, all right, it is just this one big thing in parentheses, I can distribute that into both of those. So this is going to give me x minus 3 times x plus x minus 3 times 2. Not much simpler, but now for each of these two things I created, now I have these single terms, which I can distribute backwards into the parentheses. All right, so x times x is x squared, x times negative 3 is negative x. X times 2 is 2x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And in this case, we haven't had to do it yet in this video, but in this case, we can combine like terms. These two terms both have the same variable part, just the x's. So I can combine them into just a minus x. Like negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. All right, and this would be our final answer in this case. All right, so this is the way you could do it. This is technically what's happening in distribution property, but we have a shortcut way of doing this to get to the answer a little bit quicker. All right, and that's known as FOIL. So FOIL is one of these great things that some math teacher came up with a long time ago. FOIL is just an acronym for how to do these types of multiplications, and FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. All right, so we're gonna multiply these pairs of things together and end up giving me all the stuff that I need. So it's the exact same example we just looked at, but now I'm gonna do it with FOIL. So our F, we're gonna multiply the first terms in each pair. So the first term, we're gonna multiply those together. X times X is X squared. All right, and now we're gonna do the outer terms of the whole expression. So the outer term is there and there. Multiply those together. 2 times X is positive 2X. All right, then we're going to do the inner terms, so just the kind of opposite of the outer terms. The inner terms, -3. All right, negatives are important. -3 and X gives me minus 3X. And the last terms is the last one in each pair. And that's going to be -3 times 2 is -6. All right, so really you're just doing all the possible combinations of these terms. All right, the first one with the other two, the last one with the other two. All right, but FOIL is just an acronym to make sure you're getting all the pairs correct. Another nice thing with FOIL is generally when you do it, the like terms actually end up next to each other. Doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot. All right, so then I can write this as the same answer that I just got. All right, another example, just FOILing again, 2x plus 1 times x minus 3. So we do first, outer, inner, last. All right, so 2x times x is 2x squared. All right, FOIL, outer is next. I did that in green. Outer 2x times -3 is -6x. Inner 1 times x is just a positive 1x. You don't have to write the 1 though. And then last, 1 times -3 is -3. And again, a lot of times when you do these, those like terms end up next to each other. So 2x squared, I can combine these two because they both have an x, and I get that final answer. All right, this is just an example, not any more complicated, but just one extra step. A lot of students get confused when they see something like this, x plus 3 squared. They'll say this is x squared plus 9, and that is not right. All right, so what is the correct way of doing this? Well, just remember, if you're squaring something, like 2 squared, is just 2 times 2. It just means you're multiplying something by itself. So I can rewrite this as x plus 3 times x plus 3. It's just multiplying x plus 3 by itself because it's being squared. And now you can see this is the FOIL problem. First, outer, inner, and last. 3 times 3 is 9. Combining those like terms gives me x squared plus 6x plus 9. So you can see this up here was the wrong answer. All right, it's missing that kind of that middle term. All right, but it's just squaring the parentheses is something that people do incorrectly a lot, and this is how to do it correctly. All right, so here's one for you to try on your own. All right, go ahead and FOIL this expression and then simplify. All right, so I'll show you the answer in 3, 2, 1. The answer I got is 3x squared plus 13x minus 10. All right, so go ahead and practice this. A little bit of distribution practice, but the main thing is practicing FOIL and making sure that if you see these two, they're called binomials, but if you see two things like this being multiplied together, that you remember to FOIL, and also remembering if you see something like this, you don't just square the terms, you actually write it out and FOIL. All right, this last thing is probably the biggest mistake that gets made. All right, make sure you do it the way of writing it out and then FOILing.